Muy buenos días. Soy Maru Sarana, responsable de Excelencia y Divulgación de I+D+I de ADItech. Y, aunque no la veis, me acompaña también mi compañera Maitane Bermúdez, técnica de proyectos en este área. Desde 2019 soy la responsable de la iniciativa de investigación con dimensión de género que pretende contribuir a la excelencia científica del Sistema Navarro de I+D+I, lo que llamamos el SINAI, gracias al apoyo de la Dirección General de Ciencia, Tecnología e Innovación del Gobierno de Navarra, con el objetivo de sensibilizar, formar y apoyar a investigadores e investigadoras, doctorandos y doctorandas para que tengan en cuenta la variable sexo y el análisis de género en sus tesis, proyectos y desarrollos, tanto actuales como futuros. Dentro del SINAI, además, queremos destacar la apuesta estratégica que está abordando en este ámbito Navarrabiomed, el Centro Público de Investigación Biomédica, con quien firmamos un acuerdo de colaboración específico el año pasado para apoyar el desarrollo de un área transversal de investigación y una hoja de ruta para los próximos 4 años. Tanto la formación de octubre como esta de hoy está siendo realizada en colaboración con Navarrabiomed, a quien queremos dar las gracias públicamente. Y fuera de Navarra, a nivel internacional, en esta red colaborativa en torno a la investigación con dimensión de género, hemos comenzado a trabajar con la Women's Brain Foundation, cuya fundadora es la ponente de hoy, que pronto os presentaré. Indicaros que la sesión de hoy también será grabada y que la colgaremos en el repositorio web de ADItech, en la sección de investigación con dimensión de género, donde también está subida ya la sesión que hicimos el 10 de octubre y que también fue realizada en colaboración con Navarrabiomed. Recordad por último que la última sesión de este año sobre sesgos de género en tecnologías digitales e inteligencia artificial será el 10 de diciembre y también será online. Al final de la presentación de Antonella dispondremos de unos minutos para plantearle vuestras dudas y preguntas, así que os invitamos, eso sí, por favor, a escribirlas a través del chat para que la sesión sea ágil, y recordaros también mantener tanto la cámara como el micro apagados para no molestar a la ponente. Y ahora procedo ya a presentar brevemente a Antonella Santuccione Chadha, que es una destacada médica reconocida por su experiencia en neurociencia y psiquiatría, así como por su liderazgo en gestión, investigación y desarrollo clínico. Es fundadora y CEO de la Women's Brain Foundation, una organización internacional sin ánimo de lucro basada en Suiza, dedicada a utilizar la medicina de precisión para explorar el impacto del sexo y el género en las enfermedades mentales y del cerebro. Además de su rol en la Women's Brain Foundation, la doctora Chadha es vicepresidenta y miembro del consejo de Euresearch, una agencia suiza que apoya las actividades de investigación e innovación en toda Europa. Y también destacamos su contribución estratégica, que ha sido fundamental en el éxito de varias empresas emergentes, así como su asesoramiento a presidentes, CEOs, juntas directivas y colegas juniors. La doctora Chadha tiene una trayectoria profesional diversa, habiendo trabajado en universidades europeas, compañías farmacéuticas como Roche y Biogen y la Agencia Reguladora Suiza para la Aprobación de Productos Terapéuticos. También ha sido directora médica y CEO interina de Altoida, una empresa especializada en diagnósticos digitales impulsados por inteligencia artificial para la neurología de precisión. En 2018 fue incluida entre las 100 mujeres de negocios más influyentes en Suiza y en 2019 fue nombrada Mujer del Año. La doctora Chadha también ha recibido el Premio Mundial de Sostenibilidad por sus contribuciones al avance de la medicina de precisión y el Premio Medicina Italia por sus esfuerzos en la gestión de la pandemia. Y más recientemente, en 2024, recibió el Women Empowering Award. Así que, welcome again, Antonella, and thank you. It's a great pleasure to have you here for the Navarran audience. Whenever you are ready, the floor is yours.
I am ready, and
Yes.
I want to first of all thank you and thank everyone for their time and their willingness to listen to this conversation today. You've mentioned, Marushka, that I have been working also for regulatory bodies. That's correct, and actually I have to tell you that the flavor of the conversation we're going to have today, it will resemble exactly the conversation that I will have on the 27th of November with the Swiss Regulatory Agency for Therapeutic Products Approval. Why I'm sharing this, because I worked as a regulator in the past, but I'm still conducting a work that it's of high interest for regulators, for scientists, for policymakers, because we are facing the time of a transformation across the board. That's what the Women's Brain Foundation is up to. We started the journey in 2017, and today we are continuing also with the participation to this wonderful afternoon or noon, let's say. Now, I'm going to share the slides that I've prepared for this conversation. And please, I know that there is a session at the end that it's meant to, be engaging. But if anyone has any burning question, please feel free to ask anytime and interrupt. It should be also a bit engaging and a conversation like. The first question I have is, do you see my screen?
Yes, we
Mariuszka?
do, Antonella.
Wonderful.
Perfect.
So I'm opening actually with a bit of a provocative headlines. And this is a campaign that we launched this year to generate awareness as why uh, there is a paradox where women are a majority and why this shouldn't be the case. And we are talking about brain and mental conditions. So the slogan of our campaign, which is actually available in 5 languages and reflects 5 main conditions: Alzheimer, depression, migraine, but we will talk about it later. It's about the following, the slogan: women shouldn't be leaders here. And nevertheless, we are. We are the majority of the patients with Alzheimer, with migraine, with depression, with multiple sclerosis. We are the majority of caregiving. Why does it matter? Because if we want to bring precision medicine, and that's the topic of our conversation today, we have to start to understand all these nuances that medicine has been neglecting for such a very long time. I'm gonna scroll. Yeah, that's the campaign that it is actually ongoing in few cities around the world, and we bring across to major congresses. Now, what I'm going to present to you this morning about sex and gender precision medicine and why we speak about sex and gender, because we think that this is the gateway to precision medicine, that it is something maybe bigger, considering the inclusion of data, considering also the inclusion of information like ethnicity, all that today it is not happening. Today we have the shallow medicine approach, the one size fits all. Well, our foundation is trying to solve the problem of precision medicine by focusing on sex and gender analysis. So the mission, it is really to conduct research, coordinate and support any type of activities and research, innovative piece that foster the knowledge about why this sex and gender difference matter and how to foster precision medicine. We are also creating, while I speak, an incubator that will foster innovation with a special focus on precision medicine, women's health, brain health. Why we focus specifically on brain and mental health? Because this is also where we think there is the highest unmet need in terms of treatment currently, but also where precision medicine should work the most. Now, before we go in the topic of the science, I want to tell you who we are. We are a team of 6, let's say, core team members, and then we rely on associations and affiliations with scientists from all over the world. We have collaborations with University in Toronto, Melbourne, Cornell, you name it, you have it. The Supercomputing Center Barcelona, and actually part of the next conversation that the Women's Brain Foundation will propose to your community, it is really based on a collaboration that we have very intense with the Supercomputing Center Barcelona. Why? Because of course there is no precision medicine without the use of AI and machine learning driven solution. Above all, and we will go back about it later, on brain and mental diseases. Now, we have this 6 core team member. We have this huge community of scientists that works together with us and publish on an incredible speed. We have, I think, this since the beginning of the year already, like 7 publications out, and they are all on very high peer-reviewed impact factor journals. So we speak about Nature, Lancet, etc. So our main goal is really to create the mass of evidences as why this approach is needed. We have a huge community of even lay public, because surprisingly, even the lay public seems to be very interested in this topic that it is the female health gap, that it is precision medicine with the sex and gender lens. We have also then the recognition of the broader public that comes with awards. We were not prepared as scientists to go actually up on stage and receive those awards, but nevertheless we learn, and it is an indirect recognition of the incredible value of the work we do for the community beyond the researchers, beyond the only patient population. It's really an impact on the entire society and ecosystem. And I repeat, we do it basically based on science. Actually, what I didn't mention to you, but that's because as a scientist and as a medical doctor, I think we are not very skilled to prioritize the business return of what we do. Here you see a logo. If you want to scan, you can certainly do so and contribute to the cause of the campaign and also support this independent science that it's done by this organization that got founded in 2017 and became a foundation this year in March 2022. This is a bit more of a visual of what I've just shared, and I think I can easily go through the slide. Maybe just for your interest, there are also a few important books that we've been pushing out within the scientific community. One, it's about sex and gender differences in Alzheimer's disease. Another one, it is about the sex and gender differences in digital solution for health. But we also wrote about the pandemics and how innovation, as well as sex and gender precision medicine, could be a powerful tool to manage the next pandemic. These are books that you find on the web that we have been publishing with the Elsevier publishing group, and might be interesting if you really want to go in the depth of what I will present you today. What we are doing as a team of scientists, as a foundation, we want to establish a research institute. This is a very ambitious goal, but we believe that sex and gender deserve a research institute. I give you an example as why I think this is fundamental. Now, I'm living in Switzerland. I have mainly in Zurich, and the Swiss National Foundation, which is the main body that supports research in this country, has given for the next 4 years 11 million of francs, of Swiss francs, for fostering gender medicine. And this is, again, direction precision medicine. Now, I repeat, 11 million, 4 years, sex and gender medicine. I wish I could see you, but actually, if anyone can open the mic and provide a guess to an answer to the question I will pose, I will be very pleased. So if you have an answer, please open the mic and try to respond. The question I have it is, do you know how much it costs the house of the elephants in the zoo of the city of Zurich? Is anybody making a guess? Maruska, can they open their mic and respond?
I believe so, yeah. So I
the
encourage
question is,
them.
the question is, how much do you think it might have costed the house of the elephant in the zoo of Zurich City?
1 million Swiss francs.
I think we have to listen from someone else in the audience. You're very far, I'm telling you. Anyone wants to guess? Otherwise, I'm going to give the number. Okay, I'll give the number. We said 11 millions to support sex and gender precision medicine in Switzerland. The House of the Elephant, that I think was built, by the way, in less than 2 years, costed 47 million. So 11 million for women, sex and gender medicine, and 42 millions for elephants, which I think, it is a bit of it's to put things in perspective. It's to put
funny
things
comparison, Antonella,
exactly.
very, very eye-opening.
Yes, exactly. That's why I think we, as a group of scientists, are fostering this idea of a research institute that doesn't have to be necessarily in Switzerland, can be anywhere in the world, actually, or it can be like a collective of affiliated organization, affiliated scientists, but the research center is needed. And it will be a first statement of how things have to move forward. And, we have a research center for brain cancer, for HIV, for tropical disease, at least in the country where I live. Why not to have a research institute even for that? Now, let's go into the science part of all what I'm trying to tell you. And we spoke about this predominant prevalence of certain type of brain diseases in women, and how this is not yet really addressed by current research and medical solution. Now, Maruska, you see the slides, right?
Yes, we do. Perfectly,
Very good.
Antonella.
So here you see a list of what we define as female-biased brain diseases: Alzheimer, depression, anxiety, migraine, traumatic brain injury, long COVID, late stroke, meningioma, dystonia, and the list is very long. We also have the perception, or maybe even the fact, that some diseases like ALS or midlife stroke, even Parkinson, but we will talk about Parkinson later on in more details, could be more predominant in men. Autism, dyslexia, ADHD. We have this distribution between the two sexes, and we should understand the reason why, whether it is sex as a genetic determinant, or whether it is gender, or whether it's a combination of both. And when I mean gender, it is what I feel in a given society resemble my person, like a man, like a woman, or the shadows in between, or what a given society give me as a role. Because of course, gender is also imposed by the social construct that being a man or being a woman might imply. Now, it's not only about prevalence and incidence, it's also about specific risk factors. It's about the biomarkers, the time to diagnose, the symptoms that a disease manifests. It's about the way a disease progresses over time, or the way a given patient, man or woman, respond to drugs and even adhere to treatments. I became aware to this topic when I was working as a regulator at Swissmedic. I was evaluating clinical data of new drug to approve for the Swiss market, 11 million of people, big responsibility. And I was observing that there were obvious differences in clinical endpoints readout of clinical trials. There were clinical differences between, safety profile of drugs. And the question I had as a single regulator at that time, this was around 2016, was, what do we have that? And of course, on the other side, on the drug developer side, might have been any big pharmaceutical industry. I had brilliant scientists, much better than I was, in giving me the best possible answer. And it was somehow making sense. But then I thought, this problem cannot be that get solved by one person asking around the globe as a regulator why such, you get an answer and everybody's happy. Said no, we have to do something about it. That's one of the reasons why the Women's Brain Project as an association started in 2017, and then we became this year a foundation, just to really make this transformation across the board with everybody involved, policymakers, regulators, scientists, and solve all the spectrum of the problem, from risk factor, as we said, even to treatment adherence. Now, this is a report that I encourage you to have a look at. We launched it on the 8th of March, 2023. We did it together with the Economist Impact Unit, and it was to show that if we do not recognize those nuances and differences, if we don't do precision medicine, we have a problem even on the GDP, the gross domestic product of each single country. And that's because of several reasons. I invite you to really have a look at that white report. But the striking ones are that if we have majority of the patients are women and are sick, if we have that they have to get off of the working force, if they have that they have to caregive because majority of caregiving people are women, then we have, of course, a huge gap in the GDP. Considering also that some of those diseases, especially, for example, Alzheimer, they don't even enter in the GDP, or being a caregiver might not impact the GDP. Still, the question is, what if women wouldn't do the job of caregiving, in terms of the society? So just to tell you the paradox of how these numbers and this economical return are maybe not very well accurate. On the other hand, we as scientists, and I advise you to have this approach, we have to give the costs of not doing things properly, because only then policymakers will open up their eyes. Because whenever you quantify, especially from an economic perspective, then you understand the implication for a given group of people, society, nation, or even continents. Where I want to bring your attention on this slide, it's Parkinson. I always believe that Parkinson was, still many would do, it is a condition where you have a majority of patients that are 80 years old, white, men, actually, with my great surprise, when I went to look at the numbers of Parkinson, you have that there is just a very small delta between the number of women and men suffering with Parkinson. I think it's about 6 million around the globe with Parkinson male and 5 million circa women, which is, you know, not that delta, huge delta that you think based on the perception and the bias we have in our mind when we consider Parkinson disease. And what we even learn from our patients that we work with, and we are now publishing a Nature Nature Medicine piece on a roundtable we did last year in November with patients with Parkinson. We're learning that there is an increasing number of female experiencing Parkinson symptoms when they are actually pretty much young. Maybe it's the pollution, reasons are still unknown. Certainly, what they tell you is that being still fertile and taking a given drug, they see that the symptoms, first of all, worsen before the menstrual cycle, and then they also see that the drug will not be as effective as in other period of their menstrual cycle. So this matters. And the question I have here, it is whether all these considerations are applied in the way we do medicine and research. My true answer is unfortunately not. I was speaking with a biotech that it is producing cells in vitro for in vitro experiments all over the world, positioning it with scientists. And she was, this colleague, very honest in telling me, you know how difficult it is to find a female cell line? And this was for me like, again, another of this moment where you go between surprise, anger, and wonder, how can we be so ignorant in 2024 not to consider all the nuances, as I said, even at the cellular level between men and women. We know that the male body, it is the one that it is the most considered. We know that medicine are developed mainly for, you know, for a Caucasian male representative. We know that even other ethnicities, I mean, if we look at a report by FDA dated 2021, I think that's one of the latest they've ever done, the inclusion of Asian and Black people in clinical trials, it's just, I would say, not significant. And again, this is representing a huge lack of information. Now, why it matters? Because at the end of the day, if you don't do good drugs, you have to withdraw them from the market. Here you have some data that have been taken from the McKinsey report that was launched at the World Economic Forum last year, and you can clearly see, and I have to put my glasses on because those numbers are too small for me, that basically when you look at the numbers of the drugs that were withdrawn from the market between 1980 and 2023, you have that 21% was because of women's health risk specifically. Reason for withdrawal was 29%. Then you have that 8% of withdrawals were due to men's health risk. You have that 29% of withdrawals were due to unknown, not specified sex reasons, and the 34 were not reported. So basically, this results in waste and increased healthcare system costs due to therapy side effects and hospitalization. And there are lots of evidences that says that this problem is also predominant in women. Women and elderly experience the highest number of drug-drug interaction leading to hospitalization and rise in the cost of the healthcare system. This is a very nice example of what I'm telling you, which is very impactful. And the drug developer here is still trying to fix the problem with new studies. Basically, in 2019, that it's already a while ago, but still the situation didn't change. We have that one drug to prevent HIV was basically approved, but was approved only for the male population. And the question you might have is why? Well, the very simple answer is that because not even one single woman was included in the trial. They only included transgender and homosexuals. And of course, the regulator, when looked at the data, said, if you don't bring me data about women, how can I approve this drug for women? I would have done the same at the time when I was a regulator myself. And that's also showing the direction where things are going forward. You know, it's not anymore the one size fit all approach. This is what I was mentioning earlier. I was mentioning also that the problem goes beyond sex and gender. If we look now at the number of women Black, Asian that were included in clinical trials. This is according to FDA data. You see that the number of Black women and Asian women, it's particularly low when compared to the rest of the population. Now, nevertheless, the good news is that since we started our work, basically things really improved profoundly. This is a work that we did by reviewing the literature that was describing basically publication that were reporting sex and gender in cardiovascular and neuroscience, and we found a significant increase in those characteristics being described, as well as for grants that were basically assigned to support research in sex and gender. I think this is very encouraging, but we're still very, very far from where we should be. And this is showing, in fact, that if we would be doing women's health research, if we would increase the acknowledgement of sex and gender in our research pipeline from the in vitro down to the clinical development, we would have an incredible return of investment. We speak about $1 trillion American dollars opportunity of return of investment and improve lives and economy. This is again a report that was launched at the World Economic Forum last year, where also McKinsey contributed. What we are now doing, it is a deep dive in this data. This is the work of the foundation with McKinsey, and we are seeing, surprisingly, that out of this $1 trillion return on investment opportunity, 25% goes to the female brain. So diseases that impact the brain and the mental health of women specifically. This is huge, and it shows that actually the brain is the most unserved organ of the women's body as a paradox, but I would say of men and women in general. We know that neuroscience is the orphan discipline of the entire medical ecosystem. Now, this has an impact because, sex and gender differences in these neurological disorders that we spoke before really have an impact from, as we said, risk, specific risk to lifestyle, to, and the gender dimension. So education, social interaction, cognitive stimulation, all this is impacted by the gender, being a male or a female. And then we have the biological sex that in fact with the X6 and XY chromosome impacts more the hormonal setting. I'm sure you've read this news that says that baby pill has an impact on learning and cognition, but this we always knew, and apparently it shrinks the brain of people taking the pill. Did we study what really means this in terms of developing as an entire human, given the fact that we give baby pill to children? Because with 14, for me, you're still a child. Or the impact that might have on long-lasting diseases like Alzheimer, which is the specific risk of baby pill correlated to dementia later on in life. This has to be certainly studied. We don't have these answers yet. Now I'm going to give you a deep dive case on why it matters, for instance, in a condition like Alzheimer's disease. We should consider sex and gender, and I'll show you the reason why. It's a multitude of reasons, from patient management down to treatment response. First of all, we know that Alzheimer is the most common form of dementia. We know that Alzheimer shrinks literally the brain. We know that Alzheimer it is more frequent in women. We know that if women have the ApoE gene double allele mutation, they will have 2 to 3 fold increased risk of Alzheimer's disease. So being a woman with ApoE genes mutation, it's even making it worse. And we know that it's characterized by memory decline plus accumulation of misfolded protein in the brains. There are profound sex and gender differences all over the place. We were the first organization that said there are sex and gender differences in Alzheimer. Please, let's do something about it. It was 2018. We published on Nature this immense revision of the literature on sex and gender differences in Alzheimer. The BBC came in, Financial Times came in. They wanted to interview us, and that's how the journey started at the Women's Brain Project. What we know is that, as I said, majority of patients with Alzheimer are women. We know that women live longer, and everybody asks me, but that's because women live longer. I said, no, the specific risk of a woman to develop Alzheimer, it is independently of age, almost 1.5 fold higher for a man than for a man lifelong. We spoke about the APOE variant, and it increased the risk specifically in women. We still don't know if hormonal treatment can impact this disease, yes or no, by preventing the neurodegeneration that happens around menopause. There is a strong role of hormones on the brain. I mentioned already the one of baby pill. In Alzheimer, we know that it's not only about the incidence and prevalence of the condition, but it's also that women have more brain deposition of toxic protein like tau and amyloid per same level, like tau per same level of a beta deposition. So it means that women tend to accumulate more of the toxic form of the protein as compared to men, and they also display an acceleration in cognitive decline. Although what it's also a bit hilarious is that the cognitive decline in women gets very well masked because women are known to be more verbally productive, so they mask very well the symptoms. And when they get diagnosed, then they have a very strong and deep decline. I mentioned already, there is a lot of research going on talking about hormone replacement therapy, the role of estrogen for Alzheimer's disease, and we still don't know exactly what it's going on. Certainly, we know that estrogens are neuroprotective. We know that menopausal loss of estrogen might increase the risk of Alzheimer's disease, and hormone replacement therapy may decrease the risk of Alzheimer, but this is really a strong may because we don't have enough evidences. What we know for sure, though, is that menopause is associated with increased tau pathology. So, men and women, same age, women going through menopause, they will have more tau deposition, which is the major marker of neurodegeneration, than men will do in different part of the brain, entorhinal cortex, lateral occipital, etc. What we also know from a social perspective, and this is where I get the most upset, we know that by OECD data, women represent, as we already said many times, majority of the patients with Alzheimer, but they're also the majority of those who get institutionalized, meaning living in a elderly home or in a nursing home, and they get the higher prescription of antipsychotic. Antipsychotic, it's a proxy indicator of poor standard of care. It means these women get literally their brain shut down, and that's how they end their life. Do we have specific treatment for women's symptoms? No. Do we have a treatment for Alzheimer? We're on the way. Still, a lot has to be done. When about risk factors, it's the same. We have that sex and gender has a strong impact also on the risk that you have specifically to develop this condition. We have, for instance, that women, if they have early menopause, they are at higher risk. Women who caregive have social isolation, they develop depression, and social isolation and depression are specific risk factor for Alzheimer's disease and dementia. So you see, it's a bit of a long evolving specific risk factors that even have a strong sex and gender determinant. And as I said, depression, social isolation, physical inactivity. We are working with the London School of Economics, and with our great surprise, we find out in a study that we conducted with them based on modeling that women move much less than men would do. We don't know which is the reason. I think there are multiple reasons. First of all, because of the main job they do in household, doesn't bring them out of the house, while men are more active in going to their work. Also, the campaigns that were tailored for men to reduce smoke, to reduce alcohol consume, and increase activity for reducing the cardiovascular risk were really tailored to men. They forgot women. So there are lots of reasons why. But to make the story short, we learned that if we would increase, at least based on UK data, where we did the modeling, if we would increase the number of hours that women do cycle to the same level of the one of men, we will decrease the risk of Alzheimer's disease. We will reduce the cost for the society of the million range. So just to tell you how simple it would be to induce people, this is again based on a modeling done for UK, United Kingdom, but encourage people to ride a bike. I mean, simple like that. Why this is important at the end? I mean, we spoke about the time to diagnose, we spoke about risk, a specific risk, we spoke about biomarkers. Another reason why this is really, really important is because at the end of the day, it impacts the treatment response. And what we know is that, for instance, the disease-modifying treatment that have been approved in the United States and unfortunately in July were not approved in Europe, creating a huge gap, by the way, between US patients and European patients. What we know is that this drug seems to work much better in the male population. So once again, we understand that from the early phase, it has an impact on the final stage of a drug, because when you look at the data, you see that there is a much stronger effect on the male population and not in the female one. So there are plenty of biases towards women in Alzheimer's disease, in medicine in general. Women are more likely to be diagnosed with a psychological reason for their symptom. They are not taken seriously. Women are not taken seriously. When they go to the observation by a doctor, they still believe that the symptoms are unspecific. You're stressed, you're fighting with your husband, you're tired, you fell down. I just lost a friend. I lost a friend a few days ago, and she was admitted into a clinic, and she was told that the pain she had in the shoulder was due to a fall she had before. Well, she passed in 1 hour. It was an heart attack, and it was not recognized. Now we speak about heart attack, which is more, you know, emblematic. But when we speak about Alzheimer, we know, for example, that most of the time women get a diagnosis of depression. You are depressed, you're fighting with your husband, you have problem with your kids. This is about multiple sclerosis. Very often women with multiple sclerosis are told, this is a labyrinthitis, this is stress, this is that. After 5 years, friend of mine around the corner, she finally got an MRI, she got a proper diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. So the bias is embedded everywhere. And actually, I want to give you this is a paper we just published, actually. Yes, it was a preprint, now we have it out. It went out last week, Nature Aging. You will not believe it, but the bias concludes even in the sex of the person assessing the patients. This is about Alzheimer. It's about the CDR sum of boxes. It's an endpoint that it's used to measure the effect of a drug. It cannot be taken by the patient himself, because patients with Alzheimer, they most likely won't be able to respond on their own to such type of tests. So it's done by a caregiver or the nurses or the medical doctor. If the sex of the person taking the test, it is female, she will score higher. If the sex of the person taking the test, it's a man, he will score lower in terms of assessing dementia. So just to let you understand how huge the problem is, because it goes from not finding the cells in the lab, female models, down to the scales that actually, especially in neurology and psychiatry, were adjusted, standardized for this sex and gender differences to cancel nuances between men and women in terms of how we function differently or respond differently to drugs. So you understand that we basically have to redo everything from the beginning. And I think here you see how actually artificial intelligence, machine learning can be one of the solutions. Here we have a piece of machine learning, but there are many others that can do the same out there, where you basically tell the algorithm, this is the result of the cognitive assessment of the individual. Can you please tell me now if this person is a man or a woman, without, of course, the machine learning please knowing it up front, the sex of the individual. And there is a nice classification between men and women, saying how we differ, how we discriminate. Surprisingly, not very much on the cognitive assessment, on the cognitive part, but on micromotorics, on microtremors, all these nuances that belong to a disease like Alzheimer, for example, but it's not part of the normal way of assessing currently patients, because we don't measure microtremors and all these nuances of micromovements in patients with Alzheimer's disease at the moment. We just base our assessment on cognition, thinking that Alzheimer is cognitive. No, every brain and mental disease, it is first of all a brain disorder, then it's going to be functional, cognitive, whatever. Actually, functional comes very much at the end when we really cannot function anymore. Now, and here we say again that basically digital solutions are part of the solution indeed, because they are much better than doctors to discriminate symptoms. The eye doctors cannot appreciate all the subtle differences between men and women, between one patient and another. Here, this is a paper that we published at the beginning of this year, where we are, no, excuse me, at the end of 2023, where we say that digital biomarkers were able to objectify subjective cognitive decline in patients that were seeking advice much more accurate than a doctor will do, but only in the female population. So just to make you understand how much we need sensitive and accurate digital tools that measures what my eyes as a doctor cannot see. What we do, just to conclude, it's also an overall approach to basically brain and mental health. We work with policymakers. Now we just published a piece on why it's important to prioritize sex and gender assessment, analysis, and research, also for the global south, where actually the condition of the women, and it's even more injustice, if you want, or more underserved that in the rest of the world. So they even have a higher risk of developing all these conditions like depression, anxiety, and dementia. Let's consider education. There, women are less educated. And education, it's a preventative measure not to have dementia, one of the very certain identified preventive factor for not having dementia. And we can imagine that in that region of the world, women are even more prone to this type of problem, which is the call to action. Basically, my advice to everyone, it is consider sex and gender in all your protocols, in your experimental ideas, approaches. Take all the data you already have, reassess them with the sex and gender lens. Be aware that sex and gender are very important parameter to foster precision medicine and personalized medicine. I think we all need to account sex and gender differences in pharmacokinetic and pharmacodynamic. We don't do that yet systemically. We need to also consider the caregiver needs, especially for trials where women should be involved, because women still have the role of being mother, being in charge of small kids or elderly, and so we have to be more friendly for women to be included in clinical trials, use digital biomarkers, quantify sex gender disaggregated adverse event withdrawals and dropouts. In publication, it's imperative to report sex and gender disaggregated data. Now, this is again the campaign. I hope you understand why we have done this campaign. Again, we are a team of researchers. They do independent research, and that's a way also to support the great work we do if you want to contribute to our campaign. Here you have a glimpse of all the publications that we're incubating. Actually, that's not really the most up to date, but we're really publishing on a bi-weekly base on very high impact factor journal. We are very, very active in this regard. We are trying to establish, as I said, our organization as a research institute. We will go to the World Economic Forum to showcase what we do. We will, of course, organize educational event, and that's one. This is the Medscape Forum, for which we are looking for sponsors. It's a huge initiative that will educate to sex and gender differences healthcare professionals from all over the world, specifically to disease like Alzheimer, Parkinson's, stroke, depression, anxiety. And that's a phenomenal opportunity because Medscape has 20 million of healthcare professionals in their parterre. So you can imagine how good it could be if we get the forum fully supported, sponsored, and live to educate the world of healthcare professionals seeing patients. For me as a doctor, in the end, what it matters is that what I told you not only educates the research community, but really educates the medical doctor that see the patients, because they are the main actor of the change. The rest, it's part of it, but they are really the main actor of the change. And with this, I can conclude. I think I do this to see you again because I don't see you.
Here I am, Antonella.
Oh, I found you. So my question is whether there are questions, and yeah.
Thanks a lot, Antonella. Throughout your presentations, we could hear again many of the things that we try as well to spread throughout the CNI system, this Navarran Regional Research and Development System. And as well, we try to not only disseminate this scientific evidence, but as well, we try to encourage our researchers to question themselves how they proceed with the research and how they approach these questions, and even how do you say, when they research for papers on the topic of their own research, how do they have they ever looked for the sex or gender influence into their own topic of research, which sometimes, well, more and more they do. I would say Navarrabiomed, they are pioneers on this, but there is a lot to lot of efforts
To be done, of
to
course.
do.
It's a change that will take a lot of time. I don't think that it will gonna get better in the next couple of years. It will take at least a couple of decades. And I hope that by then the topic will become fully obsolete.
Hopefully, yes. Now I'm gonna invite our viewers to pose questions for you. Os he dicho antes en el chat, si preferís, por escrito, pero también si alguien se anima a quitarse, a encender la cámara y con el micrófono y plantear directamente la pregunta para Antonella, pues os invito ¿no? a lanzaros y aprovechar esta oportunidad de tener a Antonella directamente. A ver,
we have a question from Michelle Cadena. Should sex and gender variables be considered in any study from the outset, or should be preliminary analysis of the influence of sex and gender be conducted? Well, I think that what we have to do it is to, first of all, start in preclinical research. So understand whether our mouse model, I tell you the example of metformin. Have you seen that paper that was recently published, metformin? It is extending the life of monkeys of, I think, those 20% that we knew, fine. So it's the longevity drugs. And then it's claimed it rejuvenates of 7 years the brain of the monkeys, which is, phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Michelle and Marushka, if I tell you that we spoke for 1 hour about how neurodegeneration impacts more women, right? And what if I tell you that out of these 20 monkeys, there was not even one woman? One female monkey was not included. So to answer to the question, we have to start from day zero in the lab, and then, of course, go down the line. I think that if you have clear evidences that there is no sex and gender effect whatever in your in vitro, in your mouse model, in your monkey or whatever, then of course you can neglect. And then you go back to saving, you go back to giving a strong argument why it really doesn't matter when you go to ask for research, additional funds for your clinical development, or when you bring your drugs in front of regulators. But if you have evidences at day zero that this matters, in my opinion, to respond to Michelle, we will have a situation where we will have clinical trials designed for men and clinical trials designed for women. That's the future. We won't have any more the power of the statistic and power for reaching a number that you can analyze. I think we should really use scales for men, scales for women, and have 2 different trials, above all in neuroscience, where we really know that there are so many differences from symptoms down to treatment response.
Thanks a lot, Antonella.
We have another one. Major obstacle you have encountered development of your activities. Money. The problem it's very simple. It's I give you the example of the elephants and women in Switzerland. I repeat once again, and people please meditate about this and become an actor of a change. Swiss National Foundation, the major funding agency for research, decided to solve the problem of sex and gender lack of consideration in medicine. And they've given 11 million for 4 years. 11 million. The House of the Elephants in the zoo of the city of Zurich cost 47 million. So elephants are, I don't know, I want to, I married an Indian, so I love elephants, but apparently, let's put it this way, elephants deserve more than gender medicine do. And so the question is, what is the major problem? Funds. Who is going to put all the money behind to solve this issue? And actually, if you ask me, we should, yeah, I'm very provocative then, you know, I think that we should stop now doing things for men for a while because they had it all for all these years. Now let's do things for women. Once we go then again, uh, even we start to research both. I mean, of course, this is just a provocative thought, but just to let you know that the problem is huge and that upsets me. Arianna?
Mm. Oh, yes, sorry. I'm just going to ask you directly since we have the chance. But
Yes, sure.
I'm just a health economist. I'm not a physician, but I'm very interested in this topic. And you were mentioning, sorry, because I incorporated late. I was teaching and I had to escape running to be able to catch you a little bit. But I was wondering, because you mentioned that you found that, okay, that a woman with describing their symptoms of, you know, that may be assimilated to depression and however it might be Alzheimer, is disregarded in comparison to a man that maybe the Alzheimer is diagnosed more directly. But my question is, that happens just with male physicians, or it has been studied also if female physicians can
I
do
have
the
a
same
very
thing?
sad answer. I have a very sad answer,
Oh,
which puts me also in the spot. And, you know, I always love to go by examples that, of course, speak for the big statistic behind, because it has to be not just anecdotal, it has to be supported by bigger numbers. And unfortunately, it is supported by those bigger numbers. When I was working as a medical doctor in the university hospital in Zurich, and I was mainly seeing patients living with dementia. So I was in a psychiatry ward where I had dementia patients locked in station, and not that easy, by the way. I was not aware, I was not taught that majority of the patients I was seeing were women. It was on an event that I attended in 2016 where a group of American ladies who were activists and coming from the TV actually, they start to say Alzheimer's is women. I said, hey, wait a second. I'm now doing this in 6 years. Haven't I ever noticed that majority of my patients were women? And then I started to see Frau this, Frau that, Frau, you know, Frau it's meaning Mrs. in German. And then we went, that's why I went back in the lab and I said, hey guys, I mean, wait, let's see if what they've told is correct, because this is a big thing to me and I never realized it. Let's go and make a meta-analysis of all the evidences describing this phenomenon. And with our great surprise, yes, this was the case. So to your question, it's not, we have a little bit of epidemiology when we learn medicine and when we study medicine that sometimes describe, and this condition is more frequent in women, like, you know, immunological disorders or like, yeah, now I hope that the medical books includes also Alzheimer as a condition that affect predominantly women. But I want to give you another example. In 2007, anti-NMDA receptor encephalitis was recognized as a disease. Now, do you know what it is, anti-NMDA receptor encephalitis? It is a condition when your brain goes on fire because you have that antibodies produced by teratome, which are benignal tumor in the ovary, attack the brain. You get a psychosis, you can die. And this happens mainly to women, okay? It happens to young women. What if I tell you that that condition in our culture, I mean, of Italian origin, was when the devil possessed you. So a woman was considered like possessed by the devil, then comes the exorcist, then gets locked in a psychiatry ward, you throw away the key, and she was dead 2 years after. So finally, medicine only in 2007 listed this condition as a real disease because we understood that there are these antibodies attacking the brain. And often this happens with many paraneoplastic syndrome. We don't know yet why predominantly women experience this problem. But just to let you know how strong is the problem, the bias is so embedded that before we thought that these women were possessed by the devil. Why? Because when you opened the apoptic table, you opened the belly of these women, there was the tumor coming out. It had hair, it had teeth and eyes, because it's an embryonic tissue tumor, and they thought this is the son of the devil. And you know, Arianda, this happens, I believe strongly, in low and middle countries still. So still in low and middle income countries, these women don't get a diagnosis, they get locked in a station or left on the road, and after a couple of years they die. That's modern medicine.
My goodness. Yeah.
There is a lot to be done. I mean,
yeah.
There is a lot to be done.
Thank you, Antonella. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ariadna. No sé si alguna pregunta más. ¿Alguien?
I want to have the voice of a man asking.
Yeah.
There is no, Alvaro is there. We have.
I was gonna say, yeah, although they are always a minority on our sessions, I have to say, since 2019, I usually start by giving the numbers of the attendance, people attending this type of, even in a room or online, but we women are the ones worried about, of course, this. But we have actually, let me see if Kike is still connected. No, I think he left. Because you mentioned earlier in your presentation, Antonella, that you were actually saying from your colleague in the biotech company how hard was to find a female cellular line, yeah? We have here a strategic project called, well, it's actually, well, it's called In All Fact, it's led by Navarrabiomed and the IP. He himself, after we ADItech started to incorporate the gender dimension into the research project, he had never questioned himself why the cellular, in this case, it was a cellular line from the nose for the olfactory sense, how the sense of the smell could be a warning for the neurological diseases. And in this particular case, of course, the company that they were providing the cellular line from, it was only when first the IP, the researcher, asked, are they female or male? And the company said, no, they are all male olfactory nose cells. So
and you know what's the absurd part, Marushka? I can interrupt you for a second only to say, for example, that if you think about the impact of hormones on the smell, on the olfactory sense we have, that's incredible. If you think how the nose changed during pregnancy, during, you know, pre-ovulation time.
Yes.
And if we don't consider this in diseases like neurodegeneration, where this loss of the olfactory power in sense, it's one of the first signs. So, I mean, you know,
yes,
it's shallow medicine, and we have a great opportunity to change it into something better. And you know what I always say, that the best of it is that sex and gender differences are everywhere, right? Nobody looked really carefully at those. So any scientist who wants to publish should do it, because you publish in a second, because there was nothing before. So you keep on, you know, one publication after the other, because it's an uncontaminated field. So it's even a nice way to get the rewarding. We all need as scientists to get publications out.
Yeah, we actually believe the same. We agree totally. This is one of the positives that we try to tell the researchers, saying, well, at least maybe you don't know about this, but yeah, you will be very innovative in writing on your field with these variables and this analysis and your research. So
Absolutely.
only for that, I'm sure they get, even at personal level, some rewards. And I don't know if someone else wants to write down a question or turn on the camera and ask something specifically.
Well, at least I would love to see the faces. If some puts the cameras on, it would be
so
nice
we can
to
take
say
a
hi.
screenshot at least and say.
Yes, that would be nice. And actually, poster him, because, you know, we are all very short on this planet.
Yes.
Let's make a
Yes.
picture with this. Don't forget our
Yes.
campaign, support it and spread the word and bring it across. Become an ambassador of the female quota campaign. We have it also in Spanish. If you wait a second, I'll find.
Yes.
I only have English.
Oh, here we have a.
It must be I don't have them here. I have them downstairs, the
Yes.
German version. I'm very sorry. I only have the English, excuse me, the Spanish version. I only have
It's
English
okay, yeah.
and
You
German.
see, yeah. Thanks for turning on all your cameras so we can take
Wonderful.
a group picture of all of us, at least the remaining of us that we are still on the call. While you are turning on the cameras as well, thanks a lot. Remind you that the next session will be with Davide Cirillo from the the scientific advisor of Women's Brain Foundation, and he works in the Barcelona Supercomputing Center. That will be on Monday, the 10th of December at, if I recall well, it will be at 2:30 p.m. The same dynamic.
Yes. And what I've said during my talk and what I can conclude with is that with the Supercomputing Center, we have been really innovative in collaborating. We were the first that published, I think, 4 or 5 years ago, a very important piece about sex and gender biases in novel technologies. We kept on publishing, together with them. They are one of the strongest collaborators at the Women's Brain Foundation. We even have a grant from Horizon 2020. So Davide kindly jumped in, and I will join as well, Marushka, because I want to listen.
Perfect. Yes, of course.
The latest advancements. So I will also learn if it's possible. If you pass me that Zoom, yes. I will try to be there and learn from Davide and refresh my.
Yes, I'll send you the link now to sign up for that in case some of you haven't signed up yet. Because, okay, 1 second, on our website, on the events website, you have the formula to fill in. I'll send it to all of you on the chat. So you can sign up and spread the word, please, whoever is interested as well, because we chose as today's session with Antonella and the one with Davide Cirillo, we try to find a topic that could be interesting for many fields of research and science, because we understand as well that sex and gender, it's so basic and transversal that we could all learn from, even if you are an engineer or even if you are an architect, there is plenty of work and research to do. So yes. Thank you all.
Absolutely, Marushka. We are always encouraging multidisciplinary teams. We believe that the next chapter is ethnicity. I see that in this call we have, people that might have names that are from different parts of the world. I have an husband who is Asian. I think that first we solve sex and gender, and then we have to go with ethnicity, and we need therefore a multidisciplinarity with engineers, with architects, as you said, with the scientists, doctors, health
economists as well. So,
and the health economists are particularly important, and then I let you go because you put the number of the money behind. Yes. And politicians, policymakers, anyone understand that part much better than the mechanism of how a disease works. So if I go to one of them and say, because Alzheimer's, tau, pathology, deposition, they get lost. If you say, because it costs much more for you if you don't take care, I say, good. So learn that to speak also business with those who have to change the society. And with this, I think I close. It was a joy. And
thanks a lot to all. Thank you, Antonella. And hopefully we can start all to think differently after this type of sessions and question more and question better, do better research. Thanks a lot and see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.